President Trump promising to double tariffs on foreign steel and announcing a major deal with Japan as Elon Musk.
We will protect our workers and our industries during this difficult period. But above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. We will build Canada strong. Coming to terms with this.
When the United States announced the imposition of new and significantly higher tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, the news resonated throughout Canada, sending a powerful shockwave through its economy. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The immediate reaction from Canadian companies and a major union was one of deep concern, as they collectively voiced grave fears about the potential for widespread job losses and a substantial decline in sales. The situation is particularly critical for Canada because of its unparalleled role as the single largest exporter of these essential metals to its southern neighbor. To put this into perspective, Canada's aluminum exports alone account for roughly twice the combined total of the next 10 largest global exporters. This highly concentrated trade relationship meant that the U.S. tariffs were guaranteed to have a swift, severe, and disproportionate impact on the Canadian industrial sector, threatening to unravel years of established trade. The economic fallout from these tariffs has been swift and undeniable. The Canadian economy is highly integrated with the U.S. and, as a result, is particularly vulnerable to these types of trade shocks. In fact, Canadian exports account for roughly 20% of its GDP, with a massive portion of that going to the U.S. The Bank of Canada has even stated that while the economy may not fall into a full-blown recession, its growth will be on a permanently lower path. Recent data has already shown a significant contraction in Canada's GDP, the first in over a year, with exports taking a particularly hard hit. The tariffs are also expected to fuel inflation, as the cost of imported goods, including essential raw materials, will rise, creating a greater drag on the economy and putting pressure on household budgets. Industry and union leaders sound the alarm. Leaders across the Canadian industrial landscape wasted no time in sounding the alarm, painting a grim picture of the road ahead. Lana Payne, the president of UNIFOR, one of Canada's largest and most influential private sector unions, stated bluntly that the tariffs would have an immediate and dramatic effect on the steel industry. This sentiment was echoed by major industry groups. The Aluminium Association of Canada, which counts global giants like Rio Tinto among its members, suggested that a 50% tariff could compel its members to fundamentally shift their business strategies. Instead of relying on the lucrative U.S. market, they would be forced to seek out new customers and establish new trade relationships, possibly in Europe. This would represent a major and disruptive change to long-standing supply chains that have been in place for decades. The real-world impact was further underscored by Tim Houtsma, the CEO of Merid Industries, a medium-sized steel fabricator. Houtsma told Reuters that the new tariffs had made it completely unfeasible to sell to the United States. He described the harsh reality his company was facing, stating they would have to tighten their belt and watch their cost, as they were now effectively shut out of the U.S. market for some period of time. This sentiment was widely shared, highlighting the difficult position many businesses now find themselves in. The tariffs have created an atmosphere of economic uncertainty, forcing companies to re-evaluate their entire business model and putting the livelihoods of thousands of Canadian workers at risk. The fear is that the ripple effects will go far beyond the steel and aluminum industries themselves, impacting other sectors that rely on these materials, such as the automotive and aerospace industries, which are deeply intertwined with the U.S. supply chain. A cohesive and intertwined economy. The recent U.S. tariffs on Canadian metals, specifically steel and aluminum, have sent a powerful shockwave through Canada, a country whose economic fate is inextricably linked to its southern neighbor. This strong economic connection makes Canada uniquely vulnerable to trade protectionism. In fact, Canadian exports to the U.S. represent a significant portion of its total GDP, illustrating the sheer depth of their financial relationship. The Bank of Canada has already noted that this economic shock, while not expected to cause a full-blown recession, will undeniably put the country's economic growth on a permanently lower path. Recent economic indicators have confirmed these fears, with the Canadian GDP contracting for the first time in over a year and exports, in particular, taking a severe hit. The new tariffs have also introduced the risk of increased inflation as the cost of imported goods and essential raw materials rise. This rise in costs creates a significant burden on the entire Canadian economy, putting pressure on both businesses and everyday households. The core of the issue lies in the incredible concentration of trade between the two nations. Canada isn't just a major player in the metals trade. It is the single largest exporter of steel and aluminum to the US. This isn't a minor detail, it's the reason why these tariffs are so devastating. To put this in stark relief, Canada's aluminum exports alone are roughly double the combined total of the next 10 largest global exporters. This highly concentrated trade relationship means that any disruption, like the one caused by these tariffs, is guaranteed to have a swift, severe, and disproportionate impact on Canadian industry. It's a heavy blow that threatens to unravel decades of carefully established trade partnerships and supply chains. Leaders and industries raise the alarm. The concern over these tariffs is not limited to economic forecasts. It's a real and pressing issue that has been met with immediate and vocal opposition from Canadian industrial and labor leaders. Lana Payne, the president of UNIFOR, one of Canada's most powerful private sector unions, didn't mince words, stating that the tariffs would have a dramatic and immediate effect on the steel industry. Her fears were quickly validated as Canadian companies began to feel the economic squeeze, leading to the layoff of hundreds of steel workers. Major industry groups have also voiced their alarm. The Aluminium Association of Canada, which represents global corporate giants like Rio Tinto, has warned that a 50% tariff could force its members to fundamentally rethink their entire business model. Instead of relying on their established, profitable relationship with the US market, they would be forced to seek out new customers in other parts of the world, such as Europe. This type of shift represents a massive and disruptive change to supply chains that have been in place for decades, creating costly and complex logistical challenges. The impact of the tariffs is not just felt by large corporations. It's also hurting small and medium-sized businesses. Tim Houtsma, the CEO of Merid Industries, a steel fabricator, perfectly articulated the harsh reality facing companies like his. He told Reuters that the tariffs had made it completely unfeasible to sell to the United States. His company now finds itself in a precarious position, forced to tighten their belt and watch their cost, as they are effectively shut out of the US market for some period of time. This widespread sentiment highlights the difficult position many businesses now find themselves in, as the tariffs have created an atmosphere of profound economic uncertainty. This uncertainty is forcing companies to re-evaluate their entire business model and putting the livelihoods of thousands of Canadian workers at risk. The fear is that the ripple effects will go far beyond the steel and aluminum industries themselves, impacting other sectors that rely on these materials, such as the automotive and aerospace industries, which are deeply intertwined with the US supply chain. Canada's prepared response and past actions. The Canadian government is not taking these developments lightly. Prime Minister Mark Carney has publicly stated that Canada is prepared to retaliate against the United States if ongoing diplomatic negotiations fail to remove the tariffs. His measured but firm stance is a clear signal that Canada is committed to protecting its national interests. He has confirmed that Canada is, in parallel, preparing reprisals if those negotiations do not succeed. UNIFOR has taken an even more aggressive stance, urging Carney to act immediately and suggesting Canada consider pausing exports of critical minerals to the United States as a form of leverage. The union highlighted that the tariffs had already led to the layoffs of hundreds of steel workers and warned that the economic damage could spread, potentially impacting jobs in the crucial automotive and aerospace sectors. This potential domino effect would be devastating for the Canadian economy, creating widespread unemployment and economic instability. Statistics Canada has already reported a significant loss of jobs, with tens of thousands of positions disappearing in a single month as a direct result of the tariffs. This is not the first time Canada has found itself in a retaliatory trade war with the US. In the past, the country has responded to US tariffs by imposing its own levies on a significant amount of US imports, a move valued at nearly $30 billion. This history of tit for tat exchanges demonstrates Canada's willingness to stand up to its neighbor, but it also comes with a significant cost. Prime Minister Carney has previously cautioned that there is a definite limit to how far Canada can go in these reciprocal exchanges without causing more harm to its own economy. The delicate balance between asserting sovereignty and protecting its citizens from further economic hardship remains a central challenge for the Canadian government as it navigates this complex and tense issue. The situation is a stark reminder of how fragile international trade relations can be and the severe consequences that can arise from protectionist policies. While Canada's leaders are engaging in diplomacy and preparing to strike back, the reality on the ground is that Canadian workers and companies are already feeling the painful consequences of this